Yo, what's up, everyone? It's Jack Oates to go. You either know or you don't. So, number one, I want you to take the time to click off of this video if you are not trying to get spoiled about Chapter 337 of Black Clover. So here's the time to do it. While they are clicking off, I do want to be upfront and apologize that there will not be any bells and whistles on this video. I'm simply going to talk to you guys like I used to, because I have a lot of stuff I still need to do tonight. I have exams, I have homework, I've got to prep for the students tomorrow, and I got to prep for my lacrosse players for tomorrow. So there's way too much for me to do to get some fancy editing done, and I'm sorry it might be like that for a little while, but please bear with me. But hopefully this theory will keep you entertained enough to stick around. So don't think you have to keep looking at the screen to make sure you're not missing anything, because you're not. It'll be the same picture. It's just gonna be me talking. So do whatever you're doing, just listen to me in the background, I guess. But anyway, now that those people are gone, today I wanted to talk about something really cool I thought of that could make this upcoming saga in the Land of the Rising Sun really interesting. I don't know if any of you noticed, but in Chapter 336, when we find Asta washed ashore the Land of the Rising Sun, his grimoire no longer has a mark of origin. He has a no-leaf grimoire, like as if having no magic wasn't hard enough. But this can be a chance for Asta's long-sought-after rebirth. Now, when coming up with any idea that I have to have at least a breadcrumb to give reasonable suspicion of things that may or may not be happening. With that said, there was a lot of speculation that Yami's friend knew that Asta would be found there via some divine revelation. Now, not to say that he doesn't have some decent amount of foresight, because it does seem that he holds true to that when interacting with Asta in this chapter, but here's the thing. If Asta has no leaves on his grimoire, it tells me that the mana-based power system does not exist there in the Land of the Rising Sun. If that is the case, then Libe is no longer held within the grimoire and is free from the seal Lucida placed on him to protect him from Lucifero. Evidence behind this is when Yami's friend tells Asta that Libe is being treated by a friend elsewhere. This means that Libe was washed up separately from Asta and was potentially found first. Further evidence of this is if Libe was found first, he would have been the one to tell them that there was someone else out there that needed saving, which gives a precise and honestly much more logical reason as to why Yami's friend says, well, hey, there he is. This insinuates that he was most definitely expected to be there, but not due to divine revelation, just due to Libe being separated entirely from the grimoire and Asta and being found first. With that said, I don't believe Libe is in his devil state anymore. Call it a hunch, but the fact that Libe's appearance wasn't made a huge deal by anyone in the leaks, at least to the leaks that I saw to my knowledge, this would mean that he may look normal except for the arm which him and Asta do share. If Libe has been released from the grimoire due to the Hino country being completely void of magic, then this also means the swords have been scattered as well. I believe the swords may have been retrieved by Yami's friend and others for Asta, and this brings us to the point of this video. Asta's swords. For a long time, I've been tuned into the fact that Asta, while in the Spade arc, would go into Devil Union, and with every sword he grabs, his Devil Union form would make a shift in its appearance. Not only that, but it seems that with the Demon Destroyer sword specifically, he was able to change its shape. We see this against Lucius as well. This is not a natural occurrence. Physical matter should not change arbitrarily, so why is it doing so, and why are his forms changing? I don't know if you'll remember, but I had suggested that Asta could be tapping into the soul of each sword, possibly channeling a previous owner that wielded that particular sword expertly, and this may not have been 100% accurate, but this has led me to this theory here today. We understand that Tabata's two biggest influences in the series are Berserk and Bleach. If the people of Hino country don't use magic, then what do they use? The answer is obviously ki, but the next question would be, why hasn't Yami developed his ki to a level that we see his friend develop it to? The answer to this is because Yami was plucked from his homeland before he could receive the training to hone that power. Just like the Four Kingdoms use grimoires from their respective homelands, the people of Hino country have their own third-party conduit for their power system, and that conduit are their katanas. This may seem a bit odd at first, and you may even be thinking, well, Yami has a katana, so he should have the power of ki that his friends should have for your theory to be true. And while you're not wrong, the detail is in the fine print. Yami got lost before he could receive the proper training to develop his own power based in ki, and this is where we then begin to dive into the Bleach territory. In Bleach, every member of the Soul Society have their own sword. These swords are known as Zanpakuto, and each Zanpakuto have a spirit. Now, while the wielders of these swords have the ability to draw upon the power of their sword, they only receive drops of its full power. They don't receive their true capabilities of these swords until the spirit of the Zanpakuto is confronted and they prove that they are worthy of wielding the full power, usually by means of spiritual battle. If we take this idea, this means each member of the military in Hino country will have a unique attribute to go with their katana and their own unique way of applying their ki. So now imagine, if this is true, then it gives us room for Asta to not only learn swordsmanship, but to also really become acquainted with his swords and their full potential. This means Asta will embark on a journey to meet the spirits of each sword, meaning he will have 5 battles that will decide whether or not he will be able to use that particular sword's full potential. This could be cool in a variety of ways, but something I'm looking forward to is Asta encountering the soul of the Demon Dweller sword, in which I suspect he will find a spirit with a likeness of Lit, who will teach him how to use the sword the way Lit used it against Zagrid. While this may not be Lit, these spirits could take the form of anything based on the user's perception, much like they do in Bleach. Something that leads me to believe that this will happen is that Asta seems to have this uncanny ability to delve deep into the mind and spirit of a person he's trying to save, like we first see with Patri. Then a more momentous occasion with Libe. I believe Asta's first instance was when he trained at the volcano with Leona and the Crimson Lions, when he meditated on his sword to focus on the flow of anti-magic. The sword as a third-party conduit helped him achieve the next level of his power. Another cool aspect of all of this is that it could lead to Libe learning the way of the sword while Asta focuses on reaching that sword's soul. To double back a bit, this is further evidence in the fight between Libe and Asta during the Devil Binding ritual. Libe could control all of the swords, but he could not actually use the swords, and this is because the swords are drawn to Asta in the most literal sense. To anyone else, they are merely scraps of metal, but in the hands of Asta, they are much more devastating and absolute. Now, I hate to base a theory solely off of a series of influence, no matter how true to context it may be, but I'm the lore guy, so I gotta hit you guys with some cold, hard facts to back all of this up. If you are a fan of my streams, then you'll know that the last stream I did in an attempt to debunk the mystery character and Asta's fate, you'll know that the biggest chunk of that video was spent talking about the concepts and principles of the Enso Circle, also known as the Circle of Enlightenment. I won't dive really deep into this concept, as I went as deep as one could possibly go on the subject in that stream, but I will share with you guys something that is very close, if not the same concept. Where individuals seek enlightenment through the routine drawing of an Enso Circle, another path of enlightenment is through what is known as the Sword of Zen. The ideas here are very much the same as the ideas of the Enso Circle, but the only difference is that instead of routinely drawing circles and being introspective upon the act of drawing it, this esoteric art of Zen uses the sword as the conduit to reach enlightenment. This art is practiced through ki and maximizing its efficiency. This is the physiological difference that decides whether you are killed or not killed in a battle with another swordsman. The ability to achieve what is known as the no-mind state in the concept of the Enso Circle, but known as the no-sword state in the Sword of Zen. This is when the person realizes that there is no such thing as dichotomy. There is no light and dark, no right or wrong, no left or right, no life or death. There just is. And what just is everything, and it is also nothing. We find the macrocosm in the microcosm, and the microcosm in the macrocosm. A normal person would see a slash coming from a sword, but their mind is detained by all of the possibilities of what could happen during that swing. This slight detainment of the mind is when you are only focused on surviving versus dying. You are focused on dichotomy. The swordsman who has achieved the no sword state is never detained by the act of the slash and thus is free from everything in that moment. Just like Goku in Ultra Instinct, the body moves on its own to fight back. Takuwan Soho describes the legendary no sword as follows. To speak in terms of your own martial art, when you first notice a sword that is moving to strike you, if you think of meeting that sword just as it is, your mind will stop at the sword in just that position, your own movements will be undone, and you will be cut down by your opponent. This is what stopping or freezing means. Although you see the sword that moves to strike you, if your mind is not contained by it and you meet the rhythm of the advancing sword, if you do not think of striking your opponent and no thought or judgments remain, if the instant you see the swinging sword, your mind is not the least bit detained and you move straight in and wrench the sword away from him, the sword that was going to cut you down will become your own and, contrarily, will be the sword that cuts down your opponent. This, of course, is not achieved by pure realization of these principles, but through rigorous training as well. These principles are profound, but also not different from what we've discussed on this channel before. This is what we have talked about for over a year. This is the process of individuation, also found in the left and right hand paths of magic. They also call this finding your original face or your original mind. This is the face you had before your mother and father were born, because in these principles, your physical mother and father are your literal dichotomy to your being, which we also talk about in the video about genetic memory. Where all of these principles and ideas converge is where they use the term true self. This term has been an integral part of all philosophies we've been over on this channel, and this, of course, is not a coincidence. All of these philosophies have the same roots that track back to ancient Egypt and ancient Sumeria. Asta will learn who he truly is and find God without, whilst making the realization that God is also within. I don't think Asta will be in the state permanently, but he will learn how to tap into it, much like I described in the stream about the Enso Circle and the ideas behind it, so I do suggest watching that for the full breakdown of these ideas. But I do imagine Asta will end up much like Ichigo when he arrives back to the Four Kingdoms. He will still have no magic, but I also believe he won't have anti-magic when he gets back. And that might be a topic for another time. But I hope you all enjoyed this video. I don't know about you guys, but I'm actually wildly excited for this, if this is the direction that Tabata is heading with this series, and it would be a very reasonable power boost for our main character. Let me know what your thoughts are on this in the comment section below. You can also find me on Twitter, where I do go a bit deeper into my theories. But apart from that, thank you all for tuning in. I will see you in the next video. This has been Jack Goes to Goat. I'm not going to leave you guys without letting you know what the next video is about. So look, you guys know, I like to overthink on this series. And I found something within the series that led me to believe that we were looking at the Zograta siblings all wrong. And the next video is going to talk a lot about Lucius and who these siblings are that are going to help him rebuild this world where everyone is equal. But that is in the next video. I just want to leave that with you guys as a little cliffhanger and for you to look forward to that video, because it should be really interesting, actually. But with that said, this has been Jack Goes to Go. You either know or you don't.